Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. For you first-time viewers out there, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is that they want to talk about. And tonight's guests are going to prove quite interesting and probably even go beyond that standard spiel because they are absolutely unique in who they are and what they've been about in their lives, as you'll find out as we go along here. To my right is Betty Perry, and the opening shot that you saw was Betty Perry in front of a tank, and she's got a long history of doing a lot of very interesting things, but I'm getting ahead of myself now. When I talk to her, we'll find out more about what she's about. She was referred to me by Rick over there on camera 3, who aggravates me all the time, and my favorite cameraman. And to my left here is Regis Reynolds, a fellow SSI, or Senior Studies Institute, and we attend classes sponsored by the local community college here. And I met him in the current events discussion group out on 185th in Beaverton here in Oregon, because you know the show goes to different parts of the country. And I was fascinated by his discussions and his presentations because I thought, hey, here's a fellow liberal, but then it turns out he's pretty objective in what he's about, and it kind of confused me. And then I discovered he's his own person, and I found you would be interested in hearing his story and what he's about. And what impressed me was that you were a West Point graduate, and I'd never seen a West Point graduate. And anyhow, I'm getting ahead of myself again. So you can see we're going to have a fascinating time this evening. Now, I like to start off oftentimes with what I call a self-calibration, and you've heard me do this before. And what it involves is checking out how I'm feeling at the moment. And if I'm feeling nervous or upset and I acknowledge it, then it goes away and I feel better. See, I didn't have to say it that I'm nervous. I feel better already. Thank you. So how are you feeling at the moment, Betty?
I'm feeling fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Oh.
It's an amazing thing that I'm still on the earth plane. And I think I have a definite purpose for being here at this age, and it's great.
All right. Let me check out how Regis is feeling. How are you feeling, Regis?
I'm feeling fine, thank you.
How come you are not nervous or anxious or nothing, and I am? I don't know what's going on. But anyhow, as you know, my shows go in about 3 segments. The first segment is what I call the bio segment, where I talk about who you are, a little personal information about yourself, nothing too heavy duty, so that the audience can get an idea of where you're coming from or why it is you have the views that you do on the things we'll be talking about. And and then the second part is, after about halfway through the show, we'll take a break, and then we'll talk about the topics directly that we agreed to talk about. So before the camera started rolling, what are you laughing at, Betty?
Because I don't know what we agreed to talk about.
So this time we didn't agree to talk about it. As I remember, we mentioned a few possibilities, but we didn't agree, right?
Doesn't matter.
Let's talk about agreeing on what we're going to talk about, okay? So you have an idea now what it is that you may want to talk about?
Well, I started a new career when I was 61.
Uh-huh.
Doing stand-up comedy in nightclubs.
61, stand-up comedy and nightclubs. All of that. 61, stand-up comedy. And what would you like to talk about off the top of your head? Anything in particular?
I'm mostly interested in current affairs, presidential election, Iraq, Iran, anything along those lines.
Mr. Director, do we have 16 hours? Yeah, we can go on forever about that. And I want to talk about the very same things that you're interested in. And okay, we won't have time for my thoughts, but we'll follow what your ideas are for the time being. But let's do with the bio stuff first of all. Let me talk to Betty first, okay? So I've got some stock questions here. I know you're not supposed to ask a lady how old she is, but when were you born?
I'm plenty 9.
Plenty nice. Don't. and where were you born?
I was born on the farm in western Illinois, and my uncle was the country doctor that delivered me at home.
At home delivery.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And how about, and you have brothers and sisters, or did you have any?
I did, but they're passed on. I'm the baby.
Of how many?
3.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's see, what did you do when you were working? You probably have done a lot of things, but give me a brief overview of what you did to earn a living besides you were a housewife and a mother?
Well, sure, I did that besides. There's a page on my website that I can think of in 10 minutes. It has 2 little columns of things I've done.
And we'll have your website up on the screen. There it is now, yes.
And it's, I've done lots of things. I try lots of things. I give myself permission to have these kinds of experiences. And I started driving the tractors and working in the fields when I was 10.
When you were 10 years old?
Yes.
And what year was that? No, it's in the back.
You're having a real hard time with it, aren't you?
I love it. I love it. So, at 10 years old, you were driving a tractor?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yep, and I can drive cars at 10 also.
And what are you driving now?
I'm driving a red-hot sports car with racing wheels and a moonroof and a spoiler, and it's fire engine red.
Yes, I saw it in the parking lot.
And I love to drive it.
Well, why didn't you get a nice sedate, big sedan that an older woman usually drives?
Well, because that doesn't fit for me.
Oh, it doesn't?
No.
Okay.
No. I stunt drove a taxi cab in a movie, and the director said to come closer to the camera. So I zoomed and came closer to the camera, and they all ran. So it's very interesting.
Yes. So what else did you do? Did you have any kind of particular work you did or a particular job besides being a farm girl?
I almost always held men's jobs because they paid more than women's.
Well, how did they let you do that in those times? There was a glass ceiling, they say nowadays?
Well, it just depends. I guess I've had lots of unseen help.
Uh-huh.
And I've done lots of work that was considered men's work. And issuing parts and hardware to 150 mechanics is not necessarily a woman's job, right?
No.
Well, I did that. And the football field size place, this was for combat and transport vehicles. And during that time, I got to take a ride out into the field in the turret gunner's position with the hatch open and surveying the countryside because the inspector asked me to go out.
And where was this in the country?
It was in Tacoma.
Tacoma, Washington.
In Ordnance. And we got in the field and he said, "How would you like to operate it?" I said, "Great." So I got through the machinery and down into the position, and we took off, and it was wonderful. And we got back to the shop. He just caught all kinds of hell because a woman drove a tank. He said, "Well, guess what? She's the only woman in the parts department. Every man that starts there goes out on an official road test, but I have to teach him how to operate it," and she already knew. So that's why I use the tank, because people don't expect it. It's a good hook.
Yeah.
And for auditions, if you had men that were auditioning you on camera, they'd say, "You didn't really drive a tank, did you?" I said, "Yep, what would you like to know?" No questions, they don't know what to ask.
Because they didn't drive a tank.
No. So it's been good to me. I've done so many things. I've taught first aid. I worked for Martin Marietta on the Titan missiles.
Martin Marietta on the Titan missiles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was one of the few analysts. I think there were about 80 analysts and 5 women, and I was one of those. And you had to keep your parts in stock with a certain degree of stock so that you never had a line stopper when they were building.
Mm-hmm.
And I could do that. That was easy.
Where was this plant?
In Denver.
In Denver.
Waterton. It was really Waterton, but a suburb of Denver.
Okay, I knew the Titan missile because in a past life, it seems, I was a technical writer and writing procedures for the basing of Titan missiles, but that's another story anyhow. So I have an idea about Titans and that kind of work you were doing.
Well, see, those are men's jobs and they paid more. Mm-hmm. And that's what you did. You went after those.
How is it that you're always going after men's jobs? And
because I needed the money.
And
if I'm going to work, why should I work for women's wages?
And how did you convince the powers that be to give you those jobs? Because you were that assertive or
I think so.
Qualified?
I think so.
Uh-huh.
I took 3 days of testing in the state of Colorado, and on spatial, S-P-A-T-I-A-L, I got 92 percentile with national average of 50. So when they counseled me, they said, you can do anything you want as long as you get your foot in the door.
And you got both feet in the door.
I tried.
Yeah. So how about family of your own, children?
Yeah, I have 3 children. I have 2 great-grandchildren I haven't seen. And my grandson just got back from Iraq. And my 3-year-old great-granddaughter calls herself Anna Dorothy Princess.
Anna Dorothy Princess?
They went to the airport to pick him up, and she said, this is where Daddy lives. That's all she ever sees is the airport.
So, her name again?
Anna Dorothy Princess.
Did you want to say something to her in camera number 3? You want to say something to Anna Dorothy Princess?
Hi, Anna Dorothy Princess.
Because we're going to give you a DVD of this show so she can see you if she can't see it broadcast.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
You bet. So, what about in your life something that stands out as a memory now that would be of interest, something exciting or sexy or something?
Well, exciting, I think, is making up your mind to go out on the nightclub stage and do stand-up comedy when you have no experience.
Okay.
That took me about 4 months to get my consciousness into a level that it was okay if I failed.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't like to fail.
And you were successful?
Well, it's worked out since I won a contest that Roseanne was in, and she'd been professional, and I beat her for $1,000.
Roseanne Barr?
Yeah, and I got $3,000 on America's Funniest People. And then I went into commercials, and I've been in more than 50 commercials since then.
You've just been all over the place, haven't you?
Yes, yes. And I like show business because every one of the things you do is different.
Mm-hmm.
That's so much fun.
Okay. All right, now shall I leave you and go over here to Regis?
You betcha.
And you're going to follow that?
I don't think so.
So you are Regis Reynolds, and when and where were you born?
I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1939.
39, uh-huh. And how about family? Where are you in the hierarchy, brothers and sisters? Do you have any of those?
Yes, I'm the first of 4.
First of 4?
Yep, 2 boys, 2 girls.
Uh-huh.
In typical Irish Catholic fashion, we're 1 year apart.
Because I'm the 12th, and good Creole Catholic family. Mom always had beads in her hand or the prayer book or something, and I got calluses on my knees from kneeling doing rosaries, and
we weren't that Catholic.
We were super Catholic. We're not talking about that. They've read this 1,000 times. So, and you have children of your own?
Yes, I have 3. A son, Dan, who is a professor in Grinnell College in Iowa. A daughter in San Francisco who is I guess, a marketing person for one of these lawyer referral firms. She's the one that once the lawyer has done it for a year or so, tries to keep him back, get him renewed into the program, and if he's had bad experiences, to try to mollify him and get him a better contract for the next year. And then my youngest daughter lives here in Portland, and she is graduated from college in Texas, and after about 10 years working in art, she's an art major because it was the only thing she could take that she didn't have to take algebra or any math. And now she's a computer whiz. She's going to Pacific Northwest College of Art. She's getting a degree or whatever in graphic design. Works at Adidas, if I'm not allowed to say that, I suppose.
Yeah, that's okay. Sure. So you're kind of proud of him?
Yes.
Well,
Did you detect that?
tiny bit. And
my wife as well.
How many girlfriends do you have? His wife.
No.
Rich's wife is.
Yeah, it's my wife Pat. 47 years.
47 years.
Right. 46.
46. 46.
Congratulations.
So how do you feel about her?
Well, we're gonna wish she's still in the tryout phase.
Yeah.
I've told her the next 46 are the best,
Okay.
but this has not been bad.
Now, and you went to West Point.
Yes.
And how'd you happen to do that?
Well, one day I was working in the summer for I was still in high school, for a contractor, and got a phone call from my mother, and she said Congressman Bowe, who was our Congressman Frank T. Bowe from Ohio, was giving, I was raised in Ohio, although born in Pittsburgh, was giving a test. And why don't you go down? And I mean, going to West Point was something, not only was it the last thing that entered my mind, it was never entered my mind. And until she called me up and said, why don't you do that? So I had a small scholarship offer already from the University of Cincinnati, and but I thought I'd go down and give it a whirl, and I guess the rest is history, personal history.
So
I came in #1 in the test, and
wow, isn't that something? Yeah. So you graduated and you became an officer, and did you retire from the military?
Yes.
How many years you had it?
I had 21 years.
Oh my gosh, 21 years.
Right. I tell everybody I had 3 goals in my Army career. I wanted to get out in 20, and I did not do that. I wanted to get a master's degree. The Army frequently sends us, not frequently, but does send some officers to get master's degrees, and I did get that. And I wanted to leave with my sanity, and
that's quite. Yeah.
My daughter was a senior in high school. I was on the staff of the ambassador to NATO, and U.S. mission NATO, and we'd already moved her once in high school. We'd been in Washington, D.C. before that, so rather than move her twice in high school, I decided to stay 1 extra year in Brussels, Belgium, which if you're going to stay in Europe, can't be a better place to stay.
I'll bet you've got some stories on your travels as an officer in the U.S. Army.
Yes, I'm sure I do. And most of them I can tell.
So do you have any regrets about having a career and retiring from the Army?
No, I don't. I think I would, I had really no other opportunities. It's like a lot of young men today that my family had no money, and I mean, so you given an opportunity, you better grab it. You never know when you're going to get another one, and which is what I did.
Did you have any idea that you were that smart, that bright, to come out #1 in that test?
No, I really didn't.
Okay.
Because I frankly didn't really apply myself all that hard in high school.
Disgusting. Yeah, bust my buns to make the grade in here. A guy like you, it just comes to you naturally, right? You seem so totally honest and candid and unpretentious. And I should think that someone who scored that high in an entrance exam and went to West Point and had a career in the military, that should be rather stiff and be sort of like Patton there sitting talking to me, but just seemed like kind of an ordinary guy.
No, I think you'd be surprised about how people are that are in the military, especially you'd be at people who really make it in the military. I spent 3.5 years in the Pentagon, and most of the generals that I was around had more common sense in their little finger than most people have in their whole body, and they're just as normal as you and I, only they're extremely dedicated human beings, but they're down to earth. They're real people. They have families.
Yeah.
They make sacrifices, of course, for the country, and I saw what some of them went through, and I made up my mind. Well, I didn't make up my mind. I'd never aspired to be a general. I told you I aspired to get out in 20 years, and but I saw the lives that some of those generals had to live in. This is really during peacetime in the mid to late 70s, and they really have almost no personal life at all. They do the job in the Pentagon, and they got another job, additional duty someplace else, and then they get up 4 in the morning and study for what the next day is going to be. It's not an easy road to hoe.
So, okay, I think it's important, at least for me, to hear this kind of report about those kinds of officers in our military, which we need to have to keep this democracy functioning and for self-protection for the nation, so to speak, because I've been hearing so much lately from my alternative media about the advice given to the Bush administration by the military in Iraq, and he's supposedly following their instructions or their advice, and we seem to be stuck in a dilemma or in a quagmire. So I guess the impression is that, well, maybe the officers in the military aren't really too bright or too normal a people or something. So what I'm hearing from you is quite the contrary, and that's good for my viewers to know. These are good, ordinary people who are not necessarily extreme right-wing. Pardon me, Rick.
No, well, look at Wes Clark, 4-star general, Democratic Party. He changed, obviously. It doesn't mean he's not conservative in some matters, and I'm sure I am as well.
Yeah.
But I think when it comes to human rights and where do you use the Army or the armed forces and where you don't, I think that we have a different view than the Republicans have, for sure.
Rick is looking away. So anyhow, my director is going to yell at me unless I take a break. So let me turn to my magic page and say the magic words, and we can do the break. It's time for a break now for about 3 minutes. We're going to put up on the screen some important information that you may want to write down during the break. So get a pencil or a pen and some paper in case you want to make some notes during the break. I want to tell you about broadcast information. For you viewers who live in the Washington County part of the Portland, Oregon metro area, Conversations with Dr. Don shows are broadcast 5 times each week. Typically, a new show is first aired on a Tuesday and is rebroadcast on the following Friday through Monday. Periodically, we have a live call-in show, but it's going to be quite a distance in the future, so we won't talk about it tonight. You can watch Conversations with Dr. Don on the internet. You can tell your computer-using friends to watch Dr. Don shows on the internet anytime by going to video.google.com and entering Conversations with Dr. Don. So we're now going to put up on the screen during the break 4 panels. The broadcast schedule first, then the live call-in show. No, we're not going to do that. Then we'll put up the internet address to view, so Dr. Don shows, and then the capital key phone numbers. So I'm stumbling along here, so let's take a break, all right? The mic's going to be off for about 3 minutes.
Good.
From break, and we've been chewing the fat and talking here about what we're going to be doing after the break is over. And I was asking Betty what it was that she would like to talk about as we start the second half of the show. And I think you mentioned your spiritual something.
I think it's my spiritual assignment.
Spiritual assignment. I've
Yeah.
never heard that before. What is a spiritual assignment?
Well, you keep the sludge out of your pipeline to the infinite.
Sludge out of the pipeline to the infinite.
And when the ideas come through, you act on them. And
Okay.
even if you're fearful, you do it through the fear.
Okay.
That's the secret. People don't use their talents because of fear.
Yes. Okay.
And you don't get rid of the fear. You just do it anyway.
Okay. Is
So
you think- go ahead.
So it's a real simple thing. There are so many people that are so dissatisfied with their lives, and they have no idea that they can change it into anything they want.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that if I can start out knowing nothing about show business at 61 and be successful, be in more than 50 commercials, make people laugh, do all those things, anybody can do anything they want.
Okay. You hear that out there? Anybody can do anything they want. All right. And I'm going to take that
But you do it through the fear.
through the fear.
Just don't pay attention to the fear. It's going to be there. Just do it anyway. And when people ask you questions, you usually nod your head yes, and the life force goes down your front, through your legs, up your spine, over your head. And when you're negative and you shake your head no, you break the life force.
Mm-hmm.
So you say yes.
Yeah.
And when you called, I said, oh, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, you sounded like you were enjoying it. Yeah.
So
And I'm so glad, Rick, you turned me on to Betty. Have you always had this experience of the life force and ignoring the fear and going ahead and doing what you want to do?
No, it takes a long time to get there, long time. But it doesn't have to. People can start at any time. But for me, it took a long time. I had a lot of things to do first.
Can you tick off a few of those things that you had to do in order to get to the place where you could work right through the fear? Any passages?
I can't think of a good example.
Mm-hmm.
I've done lots of creative things. I've designed clothes. I've made patterns. I've taught my girls to sew, because that was a creative outlet. You know, you have to be able to make something, be able to show something. Use color to lift your spirits.
Uh-huh. Look at that smile. You just glow. So let me ask you, what is it that you can say to my viewing audience that will help them to get past this fear you're talking about?
That's the whole point. You don't get past the fear. You do it anyway. You just do it through the fear.
Uh-huh. I
I felt if I could make it to the microphone without falling down, without passing gas, and remember what I wanted to say, I had it made.
Okay, my crew is going, yeah.
You don't, that's the whole point. You don't get rid of the fear. It's there every
It's
time you
there.
go out.
You just go on and
I never had any training. I didn't know anybody in show business, and I was old and short and fat and white-haired just like I am now, and it still was okay.
You're going to come back on the show in the future?
I'd love to.
All right. We're going to hold a spot for you to get us alive again, and you're quite a model to look at and to ignore the fear and go on and do what needs to be done in order to
Yes.
enjoy being alive.
Just do it. I've walked the walk and talked the talk, and I'm a living example that anybody can do it, because I had no experience. I don't think God looks for perfect people. He looks for people that are willing.
Looks for people that are willing. Okay.
And when you get to the corner, you don't have to be able to see around the corner because the next step will be shown to you. You just have to be open to it.
Okay. Okay, let's switch over here. Okay, here we go again, Regis. Can you follow that?
No, I think this will be a little more prosaic.
So what is it that you'd like to talk about now? That's
We could
at this
talk
date
about
and time.
sports. We could talk about politics. Whatever.
What's important to talk about now, considering what's going on in our lives today, locally or statewide or nationwide or worldwide? Go ahead.
Well, there's probably a lot of things I could talk about. I will say that I was an opponent of going into the war in Iraq before it started, and wrote many letters to the editor back in Naples, Florida, where I lived before I moved here. But I moved to Portland about 3 years ago.
Why were you against the war then? It seems funny. It doesn't seem to fit because you're a retired military officer, a West Point graduate.
You'd be surprised I'm military, because most of the people in the military knew that it didn't make sense. First of all, we took our eye off the objective, which is Hitler made that was a classic mistake during World War II, and we've done it. We've taken our eye off of the ball, which is in Afghanistan and Al Qaeda. We went into Iraq. It made no sense, and regardless of whether they had those weapons of mass destruction or not, at that particular time they were absolutely no threat to us. There were other ways to have gone about bringing them to the peace table rather than an invasion, which would cost over 4,000 American lives now, probably 100,000 Iraqis. And I just look at pictures of these mothers and fathers over there holding their babies and their young kids, and they're dead. And why? It's because of a poor decision that we made.
And you're saying we did this and we did that, and maybe it's important to figure out who the we is, because it isn't you or I.
No, it's the United States. In the name of the United States of America, it's being done.
Yeah.
And we're the taxpayers and we're the citizens, and it's being done in our name.
Who's doing it in our name? Bear with me.
Of course, this administration.
The administration. Do you think another administration would do it differently?
I am positive that almost any administration would have done it differently.
Betty!
I can't imagine another administration doing what they did.
So.
And it's interesting that none of them had military experience, so in fact went out of their way to avoid it when they had their opportunity in Vietnam.
Yeah.
And then, but they didn't bat an eye about sending somebody else's children.
So it's done now, and we're there. So what needs to be done now?
Well, I think we need to get out. I think we're part of the problem.
Okay.
And there's no doubt that there could well be a bloodbath. There may not be. We don't know.
Okay.
I would say it's probably more than a 50-50 chance there will be, but it's going to happen whenever we get out, whether it's next year or 20 years from now. And I think the example of that was Tito in Yugoslavia. He kept that country under control for, 40, 50 years?
Yeah.
As soon as he died, not long afterwards.
At our current events discussion group this morning at a neighborhood house, that's in Portland, a neighborhood in Portland where the Senior Studies Institute has classes in different locations, about 5 different locations in the Portland metro area. And Thursday morning from 10 to 12 in Multnomah Village in Portland is where I attend, in addition to the one out by you on 185th Walker Road. And we were talking about this very thing, and I was suggesting, only half facetiously, that we have 48 contiguous states in North America. That's the United States of America. And then we added another state which was not contiguous, but it was an island wasn't Hawaii the next one, or was Alaska?
No, I don't recall.
And-
They came
anyhow.
in about the same time.
But
it was
then-
a package.
Yeah, and then we had Alaska, which is on the North American continent, but it's still not among the 48 states. And I've been suggesting for some time that Israel is really the 51st state, effectively. Are we shooting to have Iraq being the 52nd state? And they kind of looked at me kind of fishy-like because they know I'm kind of goofy, you know. But American empire is expanding and going crazy. And is Iran going to be next? So what's the October surprise that will change the outcome of the November election? If someone has been speculating that there's going to be an October surprise pulled by this administration so that we can change the sentiment and we got to pull together and so on. What do you think about that crazy idea?
I suppose almost any idea is possible. The idea that it would be probable, we've discussed speculation about various laws that have been passed in the last few years, which have also been subsequently overturned, about giving the administration authority to establish martial law under some pretty flimsy reasons, the way the law is so vaguely written. I frankly find it very hard to believe that that would happen unless we were invaded or something very catastrophic happened, because I cannot, and I mentioned these generals before,
Yes.
I can't imagine these generals the ones I knew, allowing the United States or anybody to impose martial law when there's not a really good need for it. These generals know the Constitution, and they're not about to do anything that's unconstitutional.
Well, I think in America, we tend to think that America is different, is going to be different, and it's not susceptible to the same kinds of revolutions that happened in other countries, in France and in the past. And is it possible that the military can split and take sides? That there would be a real revolution again in this country? There was a revolution before the Revolutionary War, and then there was a Civil War. And people seem to think that can't happen again because of what's going on and where this administration is taking the country. So what about Blackwater and those kinds of private militias? Do you think they serve a useful purpose, or are they necessary?
In my opinion, they're quite unnecessary, except for perhaps some very limited role that I have a hard time really establishing, perhaps guarding an ambassador or something like that. But I mean, first of all, right now they're way too small to do anything to be a threat to the United States Army. And I am concerned about the privatization of the American Army, of the CIA, and everybody else. These are government functions that should be kept in the government, and I think we've proven quite well. I mentioned the class in our SSI class that when I was in the Army, we used to always say to ourselves that, you know, if they ever ran a corporation like this, it would go broke in no time. And then I went to work for a corporation and said to myself, if they ever ran the Army like they run this corporation, you know, we'd have never won a war. And unfortunately, we have an MBA president who's running the country for his personal and his friends' near-term gains at the and he's got the MBA down cold, the MBA approach to the world. You know, get your 2 or 3 years out of it for yourself, and then you're gone, and let somebody else pick up the pieces.
So what do you think about what we've been talking about so far? You find something that you disagree with, or?
I don't disagree with it. I heartily agree with it, and plus more. You know.
So what's happening then? Can we change the subject?
Sure.
How about oil? Why is it that gasoline is so high? Do you have any idea why that's going on?
Because they can get by with it. It's just greed.
Oh.
And we have had taxpayers pay to do the research to run space stations, and the the title of it is the N machine, using north-south pole polarity. And a man in California could run his car 700 miles on a 5-minute charge. So they
Really?
sent him out of the country. You can look it up online. The N machine. Bruce De Palma.
Okay, have you heard of that one?
I'm not sure that I have or not. I probably have.
I've heard about the air-powered car, and I thought that was pretty far out and pretty weird. Have you heard about that?
Air-powered?
Air-powered.
Yes.
Well, you can do anything with compress air. And
But if you think about the pull of the North Pole, South Pole, and you can use that energy free, it produces more than it costs to get it. And the big shots say it can't be done, so they don't bother with it.
The first time I've heard that, but I'm open to any idea, because almost as anything is possible if enough time goes by. And we seem to think with this brain, this neocortex, that we understand and know the wherewithal, and we can't continue to keep learning that which seems terribly impossible. We'll split the atom and done all sorts of incredible things. So looking downstream 1,000 years from now, who knows, perhaps what you're talking about will be a reality. But back to the air car, I didn't believe that, and then I got some email stuff, and apparently Tata Motors, I think it's an Indian company
yes,
from India.
bought
And-
Jaguar.
yeah. And they have these cylinders, reservoirs in the car, and you fill them up with air, and apparently there's a little small gasoline engine, because the air needs to be heated to a certain degree in order for it to be effectively used in an internal combustion engine. And from what I understand, right now they can go 120, 125 miles before they need to be recharged. Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't that revolutionary? Powered by air.
Well, the people in India have been running 2-story office buildings on the N machine power. And I just think that we don't have it because they don't want it. It's too cheap.
Okay. So back to oil again. How'd that come about, that our gasoline costs as much as it does?
Oh, there's all kind of reasons. The war's not helping. That cut down the supply. The Arab countries themselves have become big consumers of their own oil. China's a big consumer, so demand is high. The supply has not increased for several years, and and there are speculators. I don't know if that's a big problem or not. It is part of the problem, but it could be a very small problem. And they're also going to be the big losers when the market goes south.
But never mind going south in the future. They live for the moment. And I come down on the opinion that the biggest reason is the speculators and the futures investors. This is like a repeat of the subprime mortgage thing and the Enron thing, and without regulation, the corporations are just going bananas and ripping us off. And once you've settled into accepting and recovering from the latest ripoff, then give it 6 or 8 months, and you find they've snuck over here in some other area, and we're all taking it in the ear. I clean that up, So, what the answer is? Re-regulation.
oh yeah, no doubt about that.
We can't. We have to restrain human beings, don't we?
Yeah.
I don't think we're short on oil anyplace. I think we have fields that have been untapped. But I don't think we need that kind of stuff.
Okay. So
I'll be back.
then what about Homeland Security?
That's a farce.
What makes you think it's a farce?
They give them a blank check, and what do they do? What did they do for the people that had in Louisiana? What did they do? They gave them house trailers that were full of
Formaldehyde.
formaldehyde, and they had to wait forever to get those. They parked them in a field and didn't bother with the people. Their people had never got any help. They still haven't had any help.
But don't we need a Homeland Security department that is, you're laughing at me, you know, I'm being provocative. It seems to me that there were enough government agencies to take care of all the problems that need to be addressed for national security without creating this whole brand new operation. And now everybody else is subordinate to that. And you have political appointees who are the leaders or the managers in these new departments. Homeland, you're doing a great job, Brownie.
Oh yeah, wonderful, wonderful line. You have to have a college education to do that.
So, what happened in New Orleans with Katrina?
They didn't care about the people. We had people from here that went there that did more than Church. What's his name?
Yeah, the
Chertoff.
Chertoff, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't they do more than they did?
Because the people were poor, they didn't have any clout.
Well, don't we love our poor people here in America?
Evidently not.
No, I can't keep a straight face. You see right through me, you know?
Well, if we could just take care of our people that are hurting, the people that are needing, and I don't think we should have homeless people in the city. I don't think we should have people without food and without clothing, without necessities, without health care. That's just unbelievable.
And why do we have those conditions in our country now, without health care and so on?
Because the big boys, the insurance companies, the drug companies, and the administration have seen fit to keep it where it is. And there's so much greed in it that people can't afford health care.
Yeah. So what can we do as ordinary
Well, we
citizens?
can elect a new president.
Okay. And how do we do that?
Well, we only have one that's running that wants to get rid of all of the stuff that's been going on in Washington. I can't say that he can do it, but he's certainly got a good plan.
So you prefer him over McCain?
Oh, I don't think they should even run for president when they're as old as he is. With melanomas and all his problems, 73, you're slowing down.
Uh-huh.
That's not a job for somebody that's not in good health.
73. Well, wasn't Reagan older when he assumed the presidency?
Well, they put him in so they could run it for him.
Isn't that what's happening with Bush?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a friend that has a thoracic and cardiovascular surgeon, and he says the president doesn't have any brain cells left to think
No
with.
kidding. Yeah, okay, come over this way. Yeah. Well, you mean Bush? Now, people, I think, make a mistake. I hear people complaining that Bush has no brain cells left, or he's dumb, or he's stupid, and none of that is true. I think he has problems with, and I've been given a high sign that it's time for me to sign off here and stop jabbing. So, before we sign off, do you have a message or a thought that would be useful for the viewers, considering what we've talked about, and anything that would be useful for them to take away from watching this show? Which camera are we going to look at here? The tally lights aren't working on these turkeys. So what are you going to say, Betty, to the viewers?
Oh, I would just say keep the sludge out of your pipeline to the infinite and act on the new ideas that come through if you want to change your life. You have to change your mind. And you just do it through the fear. Whatever it is, do it. And if you've made a wrong choice, you can always choose again. It's not a fatal decision.
All right, I like that. I will go with that. Regis, what have you got to say to the viewers? And camera number 2 there, it looks like.
Okay. Well, I would just say there's an old saying, H.L. Mencken, I'm paraphrasing now, said, for every complex problem, there's a simple solution. And I think this administration has had, he said there's a simple solution and it's usually wrong. And I think this administration's living proof
Got it.
of the simple solutions normally being wrong.
Mm-hmm. So what do the viewers need to do then?
Well, I'm not a vote, but
We have to.
I personally, it's too late to impeach. I would have done that about 2 years ago. But I think George or John McCain is the third term, and I don't think I've ever been so disappointed as when George got the second term.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I lived in Texas too when he was governor.
All right, so I had the impeach sign up in the last couple of minutes we have, so it's time for me to say a few words as we're closing. Keep your pens and pencils handy because you may want to jot down something that we'll show you in the closing credits. I invite you to give us feedback, both positive and negative, about any aspect of the show, and I mean it. It helps us to give you a better show in the future, and thanks for watching out there. And my email address is friendlydon@aol.com. It'll be up on the screen again. And for your real late tuners in, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like my wonderful guest here tonight about who they are and what it is we talked about tonight. Public service announcements, I'll hit a couple of those. About the Alliance for Democracy, I want to tell you that's an organization, that's an activist organization on local issues and state issues, because we want to be sure that the legislators are behaving in our benefit here, in our behalf here. So let's go to the ACLU next, okay? Time is running out. The American Civil Liberties Union, thank goodness for the ACLU, yeah. And they're protecting our civil liberties, and our civil liberties need protecting big time nowadays, all right? And the ACLU hotline. Sometimes law enforcement is a little over eager in stopping people in their cars because they look like something, if you think you've been stopped because of how you look. It's called racial profiling. There's a phone number to call. The ACLU wants to know about it. Senior Studies Institute, we talked about that. And I want to tell you about the Humanists. The Humanists of Greater Portland. That's an organization I belong to, American Humanist Association. That's where we are people who don't need to have a hereafter or a God. And I'm not saying there isn't, but that's what the Humanists are about. And I'm seeing a sign there that says 1 minute to go. I better move along here. Before we say goodnight, I want to say a big thank you to my wonderful crew and my new crew people out there. Camera One, thank you for showing up. And I want to thank the teachers and supervisors here at Wellington Valley Community Television. I want to thank you viewers in Seattle at Scan TV. And remember, KFC, that's how I always end my shows. KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken. Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable, especially charitable to you. And you, and you, and you, and you, and you. Thanks again for watching. Good night.